Okay, welcome everyone to the evening or afternoon session of day 4 of the Big Love Summit. It is with great joy that I am holding space. My name is Craig Mackey. I'm an FDCW contributor and facilitator. And it's, with great joy that I bring Alison Murdoch and her work on spreading joy and gratitude in your community. The main piece that I would like to offer as an introduction is actually to open your heart as much as possible to what Alison has to offer. She is a synthesizer, a creator, a embodiment of kindness and action, of wisdom and compassion. She has taught for years in this field through FDCW, collaborating on the 16 guidelines and many other projects. So welcome. And today is going to be a bit of experiential and a lot of learning. If you have questions, please post them in the chat by way of letting them go. A comment might sit or a question might sit, and we think it's really important and it needs to be heard. The chat is the place to do that, and we'll revisit them at the end for the opportunity to share question and answer. So without further ado, I give it over to Alison Murdoch. Thank you.
Craig, thank you very much, and thank you everybody who's giving up your time to be with us this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whenever it is in your time zone. So we're going to talk about joy and gratitude, but very particularly about the topic of kindness, which I think is the door to both those qualities. Anybody who knows me may know that it's been a driving passion of mine for many years now. But very specifically in 2014, I moved out of London into a town of about 28,000 people. You'll see that's relevant later on. And my husband and I acquired a building and set up something called the Good Heart. And the idea was to have a centre devoted to kindness, inspired particularly by the Dalai Lama's line, "My religion is kindness." And I've been involved with FDCW since the beginning and benefited from these incredible international teachers and teachings and scientific cutting edge discoveries that are all part of the FDCW, the Universal Education Mandala. But what I was particularly interested in was how you could bring them to your local community, how you could bring them to the grassroots, how you could apply them in a localized way. And my journey of doing that over the last few years, and particularly through a kindness festival last year, is absolutely directly linked to this whole topic of bringing joy and gratitude to your community. So I wanted to start just by inquiring, if we were going to focus on kindness and a kindness festival, what do we actually mean by kindness? And I would be really interested if you were willing to put something in the chat, in whatever language works best for you, about what you think kindness is or what you see as kindness. And Craig, maybe you and I can read them out as they come in. So, how would you explain kindness to someone? What is it to you? There's probably no right or wrong in this, so please don't be shy. Giving someone else the biggest piece of cake, that's a wonderful, practical, direct one, especially for me who loves cake. Giving to others from the heart, anticipating the needs of others and even ourselves. Yeah, we'll certainly get to that in terms of kindness to ourselves. Someone making me a cup of tea without asking. Thanks, Wendy. Being gentle and understanding, says Hilary. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Is there anything else people want to add? Or one of the things I like about this is that it's really, all the comments that have been made are really practical and everyday. And I've heard kindness described as a street word. And I really like that. And I think it's useful to raise the distinction between compassion, kindness, empathy, and compassion. One way I sometimes see this is like a clock. And at the top of the clock, you have kindness at midnight, midday. And that is an Anglo-Saxon word, and it's based on the idea of kin, of being interconnected, of being family. And then say if we work our way round to 4 o'clock on the clock, 1/3 of the way round, we might have the word empathy, which is a Greek word. And that's all about being able to feel or recognize somebody's suffering. And if anybody has done the FDCW course, Building Balanced Empathy, they'll recognize the importance of finding a way between cognitive empathy, which is up here in the head, or maybe here in the mind, but thinking empathy, and the affective empathy, which is crying when you see children starving on the television or something like that, and how we find a middle way between those two forms of empathy. And if we get stuck in empathy, we can experience empathy fatigue. And that's probably familiar to some of us, this sense of feeling somebody else's pain, but not knowing what to do about it, getting really stuck in that. Then if we take the clock further forward to 8 p.m, you could put compassion there, which happens to be a Latin word. And compassion is defined as seeing somebody else's suffering and responding to it in the mind, with prayer, with your speech, with your body. And there's a lot of research into the benefits of compassion. And my theory is that compassion then goes round to feed our inner sense of kindness. That kindness is something that all of us have experienced in our lives at some time, even though sometimes it's hard to connect with that. Most of us will have experienced the kindness of a mother or caregiver, that we wouldn't have been alive in our early days without that kindness. And so the whole process of developing kindness is about stripping back the barriers that stop us expressing it. And from that come these feelings like joy and a lot of happiness and gratitude. So I just wanted to sort of raise that at the beginning to set the context. But I'm interested now in how we bring that alive for ourselves personally, how we apply that. So I thought we'd start with a very brief reflection. So if you're willing to sit comfortably, if you're cross-legged on a cushion, or if you're sitting in a chair with your feet firmly on the ground, and maybe take a few deep breaths. The founder of universal education, Lama Yeshe, used to say, put the mind where the body is. So let's just take a moment to put the mind where the body is. And if it's helpful, you could also close your eyes. Let's just take a moment of appreciation that we're in this fantastic position of being able to come together and explore topics like this, supported by the wonderful team at FDCW. We have the technology, we have the leisure, we have the good fortune to be able to think about these things together. And firstly, I'd like to ask you to remember a kindness that you've received. It doesn't have to be something major, but just a time when somebody did something really kind for you. It might have been today, or it might have been a long time ago. Did it bring you a sense of joy and gratitude? And can you observe any difference in your body when you remember this kindness? Perhaps there's a sense of warmth, a sense of softening, a sense of relaxation, even of safety. Or maybe none of these. Just take a moment to check in with yourself about what it felt like to receive a kindness. And secondly, I'd like you to think of a kindness that you have given to somebody else. Again, it doesn't have to be something major. It might have been a smile. See if you can remember one particular time when you gave somebody else a kindness. And again, see what feelings, emotions it brings up in you. And how does it make your body feel? Is it having any effect on your muscles, on your breathing, on your sense of well-being? And lastly, I'd like you to remember a kindness that you've given to yourself. Sometimes this can be harder to think of. It depends how we've been treating ourselves recently. Sometimes we're not very kind to ourselves at all. But if it wasn't today, maybe try and remember something in the last week or the last month, or even the last year, when you stopped and paid attention to your own needs. Maybe you noticed something and paused. Maybe you did something for yourself that needed to be done, or maybe you held back from doing something that it was better not to do. And once again, look at how this makes you feel, both in your mind and your heart, and physically in your body right now. How does it feel to remember a time when you were kind to yourself? And is there a connection there with joy and generosity and gratitude? So then, in a spirit of kindness to yourself, I'd like to invite you to slowly open your eyes and come back into the room. Thank you very much for joining me in that small exercise. And the idea is that we've just taken a few minutes to check in about how transformative these positive emotions can be for us on every single level. And I hope that you had some experience of that. And that if you didn't, then that's food for thought itself. And all of this is backed up by scientific research. There's a lot of research on the health benefits of positive emotions like kindness. So, for example, witnessing acts of kindness produces oxytocin, which aids in lowering blood pressure and improving our overall heart health. Also, like most medical antidepressants, kindness stimulates the production of serotonin, sometimes called the feel-good chemical, that helps to heal wounds, calm us down, and make us happy. And there's also more focused research. For example, one study, which Christine Carter references, demonstrated that people 55 and older who volunteer and offer kindness through one, two or more organizations have a 44% lower likelihood of dying early. So if you're over 55 and you want some incentive to be kind and to offer kindness and service to others, then there's a nice one there. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm particularly interested in this because I've founded a centre for exploring the impact of kindness on our local community. And the real turning point for this centre happened earlier this year when we held a kindness festival. And it was originally just the idea of two of us. There were two volunteers. Well, actually, one of them was paid one day a week to set this festival in motion. And it had a runaway effect. It was absolutely extraordinary, the effect that it had on our town. We know that it touched thousands of people's lives. And the whole town voted for us to have funding to run another festival next March. And in fact, I've just spent the morning interviewing for a festival administrator for next year. So I want to give you a feel of this festival because I feel really strongly that it's something that could be replicated in many other communities, that we've hit on something that could happen in many different places. Particularly if you have a building, it could be a Buddhist center, it could be a church, it could be a link to a community center. This really creates a foundation for reaching out to your local community, the people that you know in your way, in whatever way is unique to where you live, and seeing what you can set in motion. So I feel the best way is to tell our story. I hope you'll be happy with that. And then we can have a question and answer afterwards about anything you want to ask about it. And then we'll end the session with a short meditation, working with the kindness and the positive emotions that we've generated during this session. So I hope that sounds okay. And I'm going to ask Victoria, this is a little bit experimental, whether we can get the video to work or not. It's only 2 minutes long, so please bear with us while we find out.
Flowers, messages and gifts. Liz Beacon spent the day there.
This cafe is aptly called the Good Heart, and it's at the centre of Froom's Kindness Festival. For months, people have been meeting here, planning how to spread kindness through the town. Today, they got to work.
We all need a bit of cheering up, don't we, at the moment? We certainly do.
Would you like some flowers?
We've got some flowers as well. Oh, lovely. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Like a free gift from the Froome Kindness Festival. We're giving out little kindnesses for people. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
That's lovely.
From gifts on the streets to joy jars in cafes, there are plenty here who've got behind this event.
I was expecting some negative responses, like, oh no, I don't do that, you know. But actually, everybody we've spoken to, everybody has just wanted to do something or give something or said what a great idea it is.
There are messages throughout this town, stuck up on the bridge, and now the community fridge, gifts to cheer people up, and words inside the town hall to make people think.
If we could all really ramp up the kindness and express kindness, I'd like to think that people wouldn't be making a choice between food and fuel. We wouldn't have war in the Ukraine. We might not even have a climate crisis.
There have been assemblies too, and workshops in many of this town's schools. Over 2,000 children will share their thoughts.
One of the children this morning, without any prompting, decided to make a badge that said, "You are not alone," with the Ukraine colours on. I asked him what he wanted to do with it, and he said he wanted to take it into town and leave it by the fountain and hope that it would get to somebody from Ukraine.
The younger generation have been helping too, running a social media campaign and making badges.
one kind thing can kind of just make someone's day better.
I think we've learnt a lot from the kind of volunteering side as well, kind of coming together with loads of different people from the community and doing things together.
The hope is there's something for everyone. A reminder to us all that if you can be anything in this world, be kind. Liz Beacon, BBC Points West, Frome.
What a night.
Thank you very much, Victoria. That was great. Now, what I'm going to try and do now is just show you some images from the festival, because pictures speak louder than words, and it will give you a sense of what we got up to. Now, what I would invite you to do is to think as we go through them, could I do something like this locally, or could I support someone else to do something? Is there something here that might be useful to you? Because that's completely the spirit in which I'm presenting this. And yeah, I will show you some photos of what happened in our town. Let's see if this works okay. And if any of you have been involved with universal education for a while, you'll know, if any of you have been involved in education over the years, you'll know that you'll notice that many of the things I'm speaking about have their roots in the kinds of exercises that we developed with the 16 guidelines and with the art of fulfillment and other universal education things. But what we've tried to do here is apply them in a way that local people really related to, and to give people the opportunity to run with them themselves. Because what was absolutely critical about the festival was that the only paid worker was 1 day a week. And so really the whole thing was run and owned by the volunteers, who we called the kindness crew. So here we go. If I get rid of this bar at the bottom. Okay, so here are some members of the kindness crew. And you notice all different ages, people of different abilities in the group. Not a lot of ethnic mix, because we live in a very white area in the southwest of England. But we did aim to include as many people as possible. Now this is interesting. It doesn't want me to... here we go. And so this is the little cafe, the Good Heart, that it all started from. And we had 3 themes for the festival, and we will do the same this year, which are very important to us. There's celebrating kindness on the basis that people are kind to each other all day long, particularly in family situations, and that we all have this capacity for kindness within ourselves. The second theme was practicing kindness, so that we're not just talking about it, but we're actually doing it. And the third one, which is actually my favorite, is exploring kindness, where we're going deeper into what it means to be kind and joyful and grateful and generous and things like that. And we're looking at where we have difficulties. Some people feel that they're generally very kind, but maybe find it harder to be kind to the people they don't like so much. So looking for those areas of stretch where we can be more kind and not just stay as we are. So celebrating kindness. The Frome Rock Choir contacted us and said, could they sing? And we didn't get permission for this. A crowd just gathered in the middle of our town. That's a picture of the market cross. And they sang. It was fantastic. And in the middle, you can see the kindness hat, which somebody made. You'll see that in the next photograph. And it covers the town cross. We put it up at night. We were a little bit worried what people would think. And actually, people loved it. And they're thinking of turning it into a permanent installation of some kind in the middle of town. Oops. So here we are. So here is the festival. Whoops, I'll go back. My computer's being. Here's the festival hat. The lady on the right is the one who made it. About a week before, I said, it wouldn't be nice to decorate the cross. I was thinking of some balloons, and she said, I see a hat. And she made this hat. And you see, we're all dressed up to put it up in the dark. And Teresa on the left, who's one of our directors, has currently got the hat in the attic of her house. St. John's Church, we got participation from different religious groups in the town, and this was an angel map, angels over Frome, and people were invited to pin a small image of an angel anywhere on the map where they had experienced kindness in the local community. We took the Kindness Festival to the market. There's the mayor of our town. It was quite a punk mayor last year. Very, very supportive. We had a stall there with children and different activities happening and space for one-to-one conversations. Here are some of the kids having fun. Here again, this photo made it onto the front page of our local newspaper. And here are some of the rocks and the badges that the children were making. Dogs are also welcome. I don't know if you can see on the badge there, it says woof for kindness. And what we called Kindness Rocks. We ended up meeting every Sunday afternoon for 2 months before the festival for people to just come and paint things and knit things and make things. And these rocks were scattered all over town. They just disappeared into the town. We had a comedy evening. The man standing next to me there on the right with the flowery shirt is a nationally known comedian who lives in the area. He's also a doctor, so we asked him to do a show about finding kindness in the pandemic, and that's some of our core group on stage with him at the end, and you kind of get the sense that everybody had a very good evening. That was also a fundraiser, and so next year we're looking at whether we can get a range of different performers to have a sort of gala fundraising evening, but fun, really important to have the fun there. And then the closing ceremony, where we celebrated all the different things that had happened during the week and made a dedication of the energy from it. So now coming on to practicing kindness. Somebody had the idea that we should do something with the local food bank, the food parcels. So they went to speak with them and they said it would be really nice if we could offer flowers along with food that week. And just to give you an idea of how we worked with the local community, that volunteer went to all our local flower shops. And this was it was last March, end of the pandemic. And some of the flower shops explained very movingly that they would love to help, but they were really struggling for their own survival financially. So then we turned to the supermarkets, the big national chains, and we got more flowers than we could ever give away. So somebody came down from London with a florist training and sponsored nice paper, and all these flowers were made up into beautiful bouquets. And one person who received the bouquet at the food bank didn't know what to do with it because she had never had fresh flowers before. So that was a little indicator to us that we were really reaching out to new groups of people. But we also had so many flowers left over, we gave them out to people on the street. And then the makers who came together on Sunday afternoons started making little handmade gifts. And this was a little toy. It was made by a woman called Edith. And Edith ended up hanging 100 gifts like this on the railings outside her house. She lives quite close to the centre of the town. And I used to watch how the children came by and chose gifts from her railing. The label there says, "If you find me, I'm yours." I should mention that everything in the festival was free of charge. We spent about £2,000 on the festival overall. At that point, we didn't even have a bank account. We were kind of too busy to set one up. This year will be quite different. And all that money was donated, except for the gala fundraising evening. And that raised money for us. The comedian donated all his money to Syria. And then we kept some of that money. But otherwise, the principle was that everything was free of charge. And we found that created an incredible atmosphere, because when we needed something, people usually just bought it themselves. You know, if we needed something printing, somebody said, oh, I'll pay for that. Or we needed some crayons, someone said, oh, I'll buy those. And I was incredibly touched by that. And what we felt was that from the very beginning, everything that we did was the Kindness Festival. Simply planning for kindness, thinking about kindness, motivating to offer kindness to others was the Kindness Festival right from the beginning. Messages to strangers. We printed up a lot of these labels, which people put on gifts and used in other ways. Notices in the park. This was one of our volunteers. She didn't ask us, but she made these beautiful little stitched messages. So this one simply says, "You are so loved." And as you can see, it's tied to the railings in the park. The one that I particularly liked simply said, "Your hair looks nice," which I think is the kind of comment, quite unexpected, but that many people can relate to. Sorry, this is my computer jamming again. We're obviously meant to think about being very loved for a moment. Sorry, this is quite interesting. I can't get it to move at all. So here's another one. And this was kindness umbrellas. And we bought these transparent umbrellas with rainbows around the bottom, and we painted hearts on them. And we called them kindness umbrellas. And we had people who went out in the crowd and they met someone and invited them to make a wish for somebody else, a kindness wish, or a wish for themselves. And when you'd made the wish, you held the umbrella and stood underneath it. And you could either make the wish out loud, or you could make it in silence. So in a way, it was offering people, even in a busy, crowded street like this one, just a moment of silence, a moment of reflection, a moment to make a prayer. And this was incredibly popular. We didn't have that many people who felt confident enough to do it. So that's something we'll be looking at again next year. But there's this sense of trying to find something for everybody, and different personalities will do different things in the festival. This was a volunteer called Jen, and she absolutely loved it. I have to say it was quite addictive. If you enjoyed doing it, then you wanted to do it all day long. And then on to the third part, which is exploring kindness. And we've often said that the good heart overall is about exploring kindness. It's not telling people, it's not persuading or pushing or anything like that. It's a joint endeavor to explore kindness and its effect, its impact on our lives. So we collected a set of 8 quotes about kindness from different points of view, and we printed up these little cards and we scattered them all the way through town, just as ways for people to think, the kinds of cards that we hope people might keep. And we also made badges. One of our big investments was to buy a badge maker, and in the end we made over 1,500 badges. Somebody said, well, wouldn't it have been easier to have just had them made for you? But actually, the making of the badges itself was a very enjoyable and popular activity, particularly for children and young people. And here you find some of the quotes we chose. We don't have to agree on anything to be kind to one another. And then at the top, be kind to every kind, not just mankind. Anyway, we're thinking this year to encourage the young people in schools to choose the quotes that go on the badges. But in the junior schools, we encouraged the children to draw anything they wanted on their badge that related to kindness, or something about what kindness meant to them. So we had badges with mum and dad and the dog and things like that on it. There were two 15-year-olds who were involved in the festival right at the heart of it, who you may have noticed in some of the photographs. And they took a bag of badges back to their school one morning. And at lunchtime, we got a phone call from one of the teachers saying, can we have more badges? Everybody wants one. You know, have you got enough badges for all the pupils in the school? Which we didn't. But apparently 6 months later, some of the teachers were still wearing badges on their lanyards. And also, we thought people would share the badges out, but they became collector's items. So there were girls passing by with all 6 or 7 of the badges. So you never know what's going to happen. So here are some of the young people with the badges. And we also went into local schools. We have 11 local schools, and 9 of them said that they would like us to come and do a school assembly or a workshop, or in some cases 4 assemblies. And we pulled together a team of people who all had experience of teaching, retired teachers or retired facilitators. And we came up with a whole range of talks and exercises. This is something that was done with the younger children. I was involved in going into the college with older young people, aged 13 up to 16, a lot of boys. And I actually went in with a local builder and we talked about unkindness because we felt that would be more effective in getting their attention. And we got a very good response to that. The deputy principal of the school wrote to us afterwards and she said, you have no idea how enormous the appetite is for this kind of work. Because even with the best intentions, most teachers don't have space, don't have the bandwidth, don't have the energy to really engage with these topics. It's not universal, but it's often the case. This was a debate about kindness in politics, which was held in the town hall. This was actually our one sold out event. I think because we have a very controversial right-wing politician representing us in the local area. But we had also a national journalist who lives in the town who spoke. And a very spirited discussion of how we could have more kindness in politics. It has been suggested we could have an event next year on capitalism and kindness, or even neoliberalism and kindness, but I'm not sure if we'll go that way. We're quite interested in doing an event around social media and kindness next year. And then these are the kindness jars. A local jam manufacturer donated about 150 large jam jars, and we filled them with little gifts and also suggestions. One of them was a suggestion that you used Kindness Week as a way of connecting with one of your neighbours. Somebody said, well, if you've lived somewhere for a while, it's often quite hard to knock on your neighbour's door, but if Kindness Week gives you an excuse to do that, then why not? So these are some of the staff in local cafes who took the jars and put them on the tables. And then we have a festival every year where people do window art, and they agreed that kindness could be the theme. And so the whole town was filled with these beautiful tissue paper windows. This is one example. We also had banners up everywhere. This was somebody who had a tree in their garden and made the banner and hung it there. And we had posters. Our posters are the bright coloured ones on the right-hand side. We also put posters in many of the shop windows, again with the quotes about kindness. And you can see down there in the bottom right-hand side, maybe there's a poster with a sort of noughts and crosses on it and a picture of a woman. And that was a day workshop that we ran on practical ways to be kinder, which was a mixture of mindfulness and meta meditation with non-violent communication sessions. And that was really part of our series about being kind to yourself. And at lunchtimes, we had an event each day around being kind to yourself. One of them was about how to sleep better, for example, topics like that. And we will definitely expand on that in the future, because being kind to yourself is very often the starting point. So here are some of the kindness crew. And this is what the inside of the Good Heart looks like. I have to say the colours were chosen by people who are not students of Tibetan Buddhism, if anybody's recognizing them. But on the left, you can see our Tibetan Buddhist chef who makes fantastic vegetarian momos. So the cafe is at the heart of all our events. And we're now planning for 2023. So just very quickly around evaluation and impact, which of course is important to consider. I'll stop sharing now in a second. Stop share. We're back in the room. Thank you. Nice to see everybody's faces again. The most powerful evaluation is often stories, anecdotes. I love the story which I got at second hand from somebody who works in one of the churches. And she talked about somebody who was adopting a child and had a huge pile of photocopying to do. And she took the photocopying into the shop, and the people there said, "Oh, we'll do it for free for you because this is Kindness Week." Another one was one of our volunteers who said that she'd made the best friends of her life being part of the kindness crew. I hope you picked up from the photographs and maybe the video how much the volunteers got out of it. I can have to say from my point of view, it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And then another piece of evaluation and feedback is that this is a town where social media is very active, and we didn't get a single negative comment on social media, which is quite extraordinary if you saw our normal social media feeds. So we're analysing now what we learned from last year, we're recruiting, we're beginning to publicise, but one thing we are doing is creating something called the Kindness Challenge, which is a very simple idea, deliberately simple, just challenging people to do something special during Kindness Week. And we're asking them to sift their ideas, S-I-F-T. So S stands for special, something they wouldn't normally do. I stands for imaginative, reaching out to somebody you wouldn't normally touch or doing something you wouldn't normally do for someone close to you. F stands for fun, extremely important, much laughter as possible. And T stands for thoughtful, doing something that responds to a genuine need, because we're very aware that in the UK, as in many other countries, this is going to be a tough winter. And we want to do things that really have meaning and encourage people to think deeply, because that's the way that we transform not only the atmosphere and feeling in the town, hope to create a huge uplift for our community again, like we did last year, but also, most importantly, bringing transformation for ourselves, because that's where lasting change will actually come from. So I hope that was of interest. I hope it's given you some ideas that you might be able to adapt or use or share with others. And we have a little bit of time for questions now.
Great, thank you, Alison. So if you have a question you'd like to post in the chat, please do so. And also, if you just want to open your mic, you can also do so as well. And we'll see and be kind to each other and give each other space. We also accept loving comments like absolutely amazing. Thank you for spreading kindness from Kimberly. So thank you very much.
I'll pass your thank you on to all of our team, because it's these things are completely a team thing.
Absolutely. So I have a question that I can sort of ask for a little bit more information, actually, Alison. And that is some of the barriers to kindness that you experienced and that you helped people work through. I know you mentioned the self-care element and how, you know, exhaustion, closed-mindedness, these sorts of things can actually contribute to people's lack of ability or belief that they can be kind. Do you have any comments around some of the transformations that you saw take place in that regard?
Well, the Kindness in Politics event was very interesting. Nobody thought that our right-wing MP would actually turn up. And my husband, who was organising the event, and in fact, there was enormous criticism on social media that we had invited a conservative right-wing MP to be part of an event about kindness. And we defended it vigorously and were told that we were naive. And then people said he won't turn up. And that morning, we got a message saying that he'd fallen down the stairs and been taken into hospital. So we didn't tell anybody until the evening. And then my husband started by saying, our local member of parliament is not with us. Do you think it's because A, he doesn't care about kindness, B, he's scared he's going to have a bad time here this evening because it's not a very right-wing town, or B, C, that he's actually in hospital? And that really brought people up short. And so different people raised their hands for the different options. And then Simon was able to say, well, actually, he's in hospital. And I heard afterwards that some people sent him get well cards. So that was an example of really working with our minds, you know, not jumping to conclusions, not opening our hearts to somebody who we might feel very far away from in other ways, but getting back to what's human in all of us. So that's one example I brought up. But this is something we talked about constantly, you know, while people were sewing, while people were making, while people were carrying chairs or organizing things. We were constantly talking about what kindness meant to us and when it was difficult and how we were going to work with that. What we'd like to do this year is actually have a series of preparatory events leading up to the festival where people can think more deeply. And with the kindness challenge, if we had the resources, we'd like to make a short video which presents some of the complexities around kindness and also develop a workshop. So for example, we could go to a scout group, or we could go to a school, or we could go to a business and deliver a workshop that ostensibly is about how to do the challenge, but in practice is sharing universal education, is getting people to think about the barriers to kindness and the opportunities to stretch themselves. So I hope that answers your question.
Wonderful, thank you.
So we've, and I mean, it's always with us, how can we go deeper? How can we go beyond the obvious? Because that's
absolutely
change will happen. We've got Hilary with her hand up. Hilary, hi.
Hello, yeah, thank you. I was wondering if you're making a guidebook so that other communities could do the same sort of festival elsewhere.
Today is my first step towards sharing what we've been doing. So one step at a time. I have to say, last year we were so completely blown away and basically exhausted that, you know, that nothing like that happened. This year I'm retaining the title of festival director, but the town has given us the funding for a festival administrator, and I'm hoping that will give me the space to take a little bit more of a helicopter view. But I think we're still learning as well, and the complexities of it. The huge discussion today during the interviews was, how can we reach people in the town who aren't usually reached? You know, not the obvious suspects. We've got a town, very active town, 28,000 people, but probably 1,000 people are really active. And how can we reach the people who never take part in these things, who don't read the local newspaper, who don't listen to the local radio, who don't read the notes that come home in their children's book bags? You know, so that's what we would really like to do. And I would be much happier putting together a toolkit when I feel that we've made significant progress towards that. Wendy.
Alison, just amazing. Your energy is just inspiring. What tips would you give for getting so many volunteers involved? You know, how did you first kind of open it up with people? I'm thinking of doing a kindness festival. How did you get the people to help?
Well, it was a little bit of a miracle, actually, because, as I said, two of us started planning it in November. And then about January the 2nd, we thought, but we've got no volunteers. We literally had no volunteers. So I had a discussion with Mel, my colleague, who's a young mother. And we said, well, we'll open up, we'll have some events at the Good Heart at the cafe. This is where the premises are really, really helpful because it grounds everything. And I said, maybe a Wednesday evening. And she said, I see hot chocolate on a Sunday afternoon. And she was absolutely right. Almost nobody came on the Wednesday evening. And all my Sunday afternoons disappeared because people just seemed to love the idea of getting together during the winter, dark, rainy afternoons, to drink hot chocolate and talk and do things around kindness. And it brought people out of people that I'd never met, you know, people who are very varied group, just attracted by this word. So I would say, be bold and trust that this word kindness really connects with people. But having said that, the whole making thing was very big. People coming together to sew and to paint makes it much safer, easier to come on your own. And I discovered, for example, there was one woman who contacted me and said, oh, I've got some things you might like for the festival. And I didn't put that in the slideshow, but she gave me a bag, literally, you see my hands, that big, and it was full of little knitted hearts. And she'd been making them for years and she didn't know what to do with them. So it's discovering those sorts of things going on. And there was another woman who contacted me and asked if she could come and see me privately. And actually that was something I did that worked very well. I said, I will be in the cafe between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock every Monday afternoon. And I never had a Monday afternoon on my own because people knew that they could come and find me. It's this face-to-face thing, especially after the pandemic. Anyway, so this lovely woman came to see me, very cautious, got very fearful and explained that she has overwhelming social anxiety, but she really wanted to get involved. And we had a long conversation about that. And I mean, you know, she's on medication, she's getting disability benefits. We're talking quite a serious life-limiting thing. And it turned out that her hobby was also knitting little hearts and tying them with messages around the town all year round. So gradually she got involved in the kindness crew. And then when we redecorated the cafe last summer, she was our #1 painter and decorator. Didn't want to chat with other people, but just loved being given a few walls to paint and just got on with it. And she now comes to our big events. And the last event we had last Sunday for World Kindness Day, she felt comfortable enough to send us all a WhatsApp message, actually, saying, I don't know if I'll get there because I'm having a very anxious day. And if anybody can bring a dog, that'll make it much easier for me. Which was a double thing, that she felt that she could say that openly to a group of 20 or 30 people. And actually that brings another practical thing, WhatsApp. WhatsApp was absolutely brilliant for us, WhatsApp groups. So, but that gives you an idea. I think what was amazing about the festival was that we didn't set out with big ambitions. I mean, maybe the whole thing sounds very ambitious, but it just grew one day at a time. And we just did it in the confidence that if we were kind and we created an environment where people felt it was safe and, you know, relatively straightforward to be kind, we would see what happened. And we had no funders, so we had nobody to worry about. We had no targets. And I think that was really special. And I think you can do something like this in a really small scale way. In fact, what I'd recommend is that you just find a way to put one foot forward and see where that leads. And I think that was part of what drew people in. And
so actually, we have about 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to insert a next step here, and a question for everyone, whether you're tuning in live or you've listened to the recording. Just take a moment to notice something that's inspired you. We have a few comments about the flowers and the food bank, the collective, and people, your example of kindness, things like that. And take a moment to write something down. What is your inspiration you want to take away? Hold it in your heart. And also, do you have a next step? Do you have a next step? So just take a moment. You can share it in the chat and I'll read them as they're coming out.
And I think the other thing we can do while we're doing that is just to connect with any warm or inspiring feeling that we've got in our hearts at the moment. And just imagine we have this whole web of positive feeling and joy and gratitude and generosity and kindness between us all. And how powerful that is. And imagine that spreading out like light around the world and touching everybody, every animal, every bird, every fish, every human being in need of it. These positive initiatives can start with us right here. And we can dedicate any positive energy that we've created in that way.
Beautiful. So that feels to me like a dedication to let the energy go, let it magnify. Incidentally, do you know offhand when World Kindness Day is? There was a question around syncing up some dates, or is there, do you know what that date is?
It seems to move around each year, but this year it was the 13th of November.
Okay. All right. So yeah, please look up World Kindness Day, and maybe that's the next step.
Helen, thank you. I love the idea of incorporating some of this into your drama society. That's exactly what I meant about working with whatever societies and groups We had quite a few other events that I didn't talk about, and they were nearly all created in partnership with local organisations. Kimberly is going to do painted rocks. Fantastic.
Yes. Okay, so that brings us to completion with this phase of the inspiration. And just a heartfelt thank you to you, Alison. Thank you to FDCW for hosting this. And yeah, do you have any other closing comments or words, Alison?
Only a thank you. And, you know, I'm really glad if this has touched anybody. And sometimes we don't know at the time, it can pop up later. So I'll be really happy if that's if that's happened for you. And yeah, very, very warm thank you to everybody who's been translating and who's given their time, and to you, Craig, for moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig and Alison. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please unmute yourselves
Thank
and
you.
bye. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.